Well, I just finished A Clash of Kings, and I think I understand what this book is doing. It's not trying to be the first book, A Game of Thrones. This book, that first book was a fall. The fall of honor, the fall of Ned, the shattering of a world that looked a little like Tolkien's. But this book is what happens after the fall. This is the world trying to go on, but without honor, without truth, and without any clear idea of good and evil. And what we get is something colder and more political. But there's also still something deeper. Because underneath all the politics, it's not as much as we got in the first book, but it's still there. Underneath all the politics, the myth is still growing. One of the things that I liked more about the first book was we got much more, many more uh, Daenerys chapters. This book we got some, and those were very interesting, but not as many. It doesn't seem like, I haven't counted, but it doesn't seem like there were as many. And we weren't really with Bran that much either. And those were my two favorite sections. Whenever I got to a Daenerys or a Bran chapter in the first book, I mean that those are my favorite parts of the first book, and we got some, but not that much. But we did get some. Like underneath the politics, the myth is still growing. Uh, but to begin with this final section, of course, the battle is the great centerpiece. But what struck me most wasn't really the spectacle. It was Podrick Payne. He was a boy, just a squire, who saved Tyrion. It wasn't a knight or a lord or a great hero. It was just this boy. Like all the grandeur of chivalry collapses into something much smaller and truer. And this is where Martin, I've talked a lot about how he feels like Tolkien in some ways and how he moves away from Tolkien in other ways, but this is where Martin feels very close to C.S. Lewis. Because Lewis believed that goodness often appears in small, almost invisible acts, not in the grand gesture of kings. And that's exactly what happens here. Tyrion survives not because of power, but because of loyalty. Not because of glory, but because of a boy who stayed. And yet, even that goodness is surrounded by corruption. Because Tyrion wins the battle, but he's rewarded with betrayal. His own sister tries to have him murdered. And this is where Martin diverges from Tolkien. Because in Tolkien, victory reveals truth. But in Martin, victory hides it. And then Sansa's storyline might be the most quietly powerful. Uh, she might be she's very quietly powerful in this final section. Because Sansa doesn't have any power. No sword, no army, and no escape. Only, and this may be why I like this so much, only stories. And when the Hound comes to her, it's not strength that saves her, nor is it defiance. It's a song. Gentle mother, font of mercy. It's just an incredible moment because it's the last remnant of a moral world that no longer exists. And this reminds me much of Lewis again, almost like in the Narnia book, The Silver Chair, where remembering the truth matters more than fighting. Sansa doesn't defeat the Hound. She reminds him of something. Something buried and something human. And it works. But the tragedy is that Sansa is learning that the songs are not necessarily true. But they're still necessary. That's very much a Charles Williams idea. Williams believed that symbols and stories carry real spiritual weight, even when the world seems to contradict them. Sansa survives not by rejecting the stories, but by transforming them into something real. And then we come to Theon, whose arc might be probably the most devastating in this second book. Theon was just a minor character, it seemed like, in the first book. I mean, he showed up, he was there, but I didn't really pay much attention to him. And then he went off at the end of the first book back to his home. Rob sent him there, so I wasn't really expecting him to become this major of a character. But his arc is just devastating because it's not just failure, it's self-betrayal. He keeps asking, who am I? Is he a Stark? Is he a Greyjoy? Is he a prince? Or is he nothing? And the answer becomes no one. But not like Arya's no one. Remember that was also Arya what Arya's answer. But Arya's no one is potential. Theon's no one is true emptiness. There's no potential in his no one because it's true emptiness. Arya's no one is no one yet. Like Arya is a block of stone that a sculptor hasn't yet carved. Like Michelangelo, or like David before Michelangelo carved them. And Theon is essentially a living version of that phrase that Arya heard, I think, of Valar Morghulis. All men must die. Because some die before they're dead. Theon's tragedy is that he knows the truth. This is their place, not mine. That line feels almost Tolkien like, but yet in some ways inverted as well. In Tolkien, belonging is discovered, but here belonging can be lost forever. And then we come to Daenerys again. And this is where the book quietly shifts, I think, back into myth. Daenerys leaves Karth. But what does she take with her? Not an army, not power. She takes prophecy. 3 heads, 3 fires, 3 treasons. It's pure mythic structure. And Martin is starting to feel closer to Tolkien again in this, but a little bit darker. In Tolkien, prophecy clarifies. In Martin, it complicates. It raises questions instead of answering them. And yet you can feel something building. Like the mythic layer is slowly rising up beneath the political surface. And then we come to Jon and the Night's Watch. Jon's story is one of the most morally complex, I think, in the second book. Because he kills Quarren Halfhand. But it's not murder, it's obedience, sacrifice, and strategy. And it breaks him. This is where Martin asks a question Tolkien rarely asks directly. What happens when doing the right thing feels like doing the wrong thing? Jon has to betray his brothers to serve them. He has to become something he hates in order to protect what he loves. And that's a deeply tragic vision of honor. And then we end this second book with Bran. In the first book, we ended with Daenerys. In this book, we end with Bran. Bran's storyline might be the most philosophical because he faces a different kind of temptation. It's not power, but escape. To become the wolf. To leave behind pain. To forget that he's broken. Better Bran the Beastling. That line is just chilling because it raises a profound question. Is it better to be fully human and suffer, or to become something else and be free? Jojen's warning here is crucial, I think. He says, remember who you are. That is very Tolkien. In Tolkien, identity is sacred. But Martin adds a darker layer. What if remembering who you are hurts too much? So, this book feels very different from the first book. It's not about the fall, it's about the aftermath. It's less myth on the surface and more politics, more maneuvering. But underneath the myth is still growing. Bran is becoming something more. Daenerys is becoming something more. And Jon is becoming something more. Even Arya standing on the edge of becoming no one. And that's why I think this book will matter more in hindsight than it does now once I've read the other books. Because it's planting seeds, not resolving them. We don't see all of these things coming up. But I'm gonna take a short break before moving on to the third book, A Storm of Swords. Mainly because I want to read Project Hail Mary first, the book by Andy Weir, which is getting a lot of praise for the new movie that's out. But I want to read the book before I see the movie. Um, so I'm gonna I don't know if I'll post any regular videos about it or just a video giving my thoughts after I finish. But um but I'm gonna be reading that first. I'm gonna take a break from Martin. But when I come back to this, I have a feeling all of this, the politics, the prophecy, the identity struggles, are going to collide. And if it does, this book might end up being much more important than it seems right now. Uh, but anyway, after finishing A Clash of Kings, I'm starting to think the myth is hiding under the politics. Uh, my question for y'all, do you think this book is weaker than the first Game of Thrones? Or just a quieter setup for something bigger? I'll leave you with that. I'll see y'all next time.